Hello and welcome to another episode of Unique Professions. Have you ever looked in a cookbook and wondered where has this recipe come from? Who has designed it? I know I certainly have. And today is my absolute pleasure to welcome Natalie Bennett, who has many hats, but one of them is a food developer, recipe developer. So Natalie, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, David. How are you?
Good. I'm very well. Now, Natalie, where did your love of cooking first start?
Wow, we're just diving right in here.
Absolutely.
Hello, listeners. How are you today? Look, I'm a recipe developer, and part of what I do is, actually, I'll tell you, every time I go through customs, and you know how got to put your profession on the little card.
Yep.
And sometimes they will actually stop and read it, and they'll say, "Oh, recipe developer, I've never heard of that before." And the phrase was kind of coined, I think, around the time that I started recipe development, which would have been about 2012. That's the official time that I got the actual title for Thermomix in Australia. And I helped them design quite a few of their cookbooks. And in design, I don't mean the layout and format, although that is part of my background, is advertising and design. I mean the actual recipes, so that people with one of those marvellous little machines could work out exactly what to do with it. Because it's one thing to have a machine on your bench, and it's another thing entirely to get the use out of it. And people spend a little bit of money on them, so they do like to be able to use them. So I would write recipes, and they were pretty much controlled by the usual things that the marketing wheels of motion are, which is the seasons and the holidays and the special days, from Valentine's Day to Chinese New Year to Christmas. There's lots of dishes built around that. So that's what I would do. I would go through and develop special occasion recipes, and also the normal cookbooks that were issued with the machine.
And I guess, if you look at something like, I'm just going to do an analogy here. If you do, like if you go to a furniture shop, you see someone's maker's names. I've always wondered why, more often than not, does not your work as a recipe developer, why isn't that being named? Why is it your name on it?
On the thing, yeah. So that is tricky. When you sign to a company such as that one, part of it was they actually said, when you're writing recipes, they're just Thermomix in Australia. So my name wasn't involved with it. I was just one of the mystery people. I suppose there's a loveliness in anonymity, and, it's just like being a ghostwriter for someone else. I guess it's, but yeah, in the long run, I think when I was there after a little while, I kind of wanted to have more say over what it is that I created, because I felt driven by the passion of what I loved, the food that I loved. And that was not as congruent with the company, with what their goals were, what they wanted to achieve. So we did drift apart eventually, and I formed my own company, and it was more wellness based. So rather than kind of standard diet, it was more based around things that made me feel good about myself when I was eating, but still were delicious, because delicious is like, that's my goal for everything. It's got to be, oh, yum, I want lots of this. That's how a recipe passes the grade for me. And I'm pretty fussy, so.
And of course, your business is Natalie Bennett Food.
That's right.
I'm just giving you a free plug there.
Oh, thanks.
Now, I know that you're obviously you are a recipe developer, but also you are a product developer as well.
That's true. So just recently I had a product come out that was a truffle nougat. Now, not truffle like the chocolate ones. The truffles like little piggies dig out of the ground. So it was an unusual pairing, but it's something that I came up with when I was working quite closely with Great Southern Truffles, and they are if you like, an agent for a lot of the truffle growers across Australia. And Australia's got a really huge truffle industry, and we grow some beauties. And there's like a little magic season, and it's about 6-8 weeks long if we're really lucky, slightly longer, but usually that's it, when the fresh truffles come out of the ground. And then the rest of the time, you've got the truffles that don't make the grade. So you've got grades 1, 2 and 3, and one goes flying overseas to France and fabulous places where they're freshly shaved across everyone's pasture and on. And then grade 2 tends to, be made into, chopped up truffle bits and pieces. And then grade 3 is used freeze-dried, and you've got like truffle chips, which can then be used in other products. And we were looking for things to do with that, with those, little bits of truffle. And I had tried, truffle butter, truffle sauce, truffle pasta, truffle chips, truffle chili, truffle, there's all these things, but they're all savoury. And I was like, from the time that I spent in Asia, there was a lot of blend. There wasn't that hard division between we have something salty and savoury, and then after we've done all that, then we have something sweet, which we call dessert or postres if you're Spanish. They kind of mix it round. So if you've ever been to dim sum, they'll have like egg tarts on the table at the same time as chicken's feet. It's not all that bad, don't worry. They have lovely prawn dumplings. If you've never been to dim sum, don't let me dissuade you. They will have everything at the same time. A little bit of sweet, a little bit of salty, hitting all the areas that are on your tongue, or the taste buds, the 6 flavours. So I thought, well, this has really got an umami to it. Truffle does. That's what attracts people to it, and pigs particularly. But that je ne sais quoi that it offered, I wanted to see a sweet twist on it. And I some of the classic truffle pairings are with hazelnuts, or with apricots. So I chose to use apricots and hazelnuts and put them into a nougat base. And we have developed that, and that launched very recently. And with this coming truffle season, 2024, you'll see this truffle nougat available from Great Southern Truffles on the shelves. And it is something delicious and unusual, and a really cool way of trying truffle if you haven't tried it, kind of making it a bit approachable, and maybe another angle that might attract new people to truffles. And so that works for the company, yep. And it works for me because I get paid to do it.
Excellent. Can't lose there.
Yes.
Now, what is your process when you develop a recipe? When a client or a company, decides? So
I've worked for quite a few companies. So a lot of them, obviously, with that health background that we were discussing, I had Adventure Snacks, and that was Tracy, and she's actually branched out into quite a little lunchbox company. She wanted to develop something that was really easy for working mums to just like add water to, and then mix it up and then bake it on a tray, and then you've got something that you knew what was in the cookies that you were sending to school with your kids. It ticked all the boxes, you can't have nuts, you can't do this, you can't do that anymore in a school lunchbox. So we developed 2 or 3 products together that were then prepackaged, and then they were very simple for women to make and put into lunchboxes. She's now branched out and she does lunchboxes themselves. Really cool little bento packs and all kinds of stuff. So that, and then I've had other people who developed juices or green smoothies, stuff like that. The process that I start off with is usually a brief, just like you do when you're in advertising. So I was in advertising prior to this, and the customer will come along, or the client will come along and say, hey, this is my target market. So in this case, with the Adventure Snacks, target market was mums that were busy and time poor and but health conscious and wanted to give their kids the best. Who doesn't, right?
Exactly.
And so she said, I want to appeal to this. It's got to be simple. It's got to be fast. It's got to be something that can sit on the shelf for about 3 months so that, it gives people time to find it and buy it. So there's some parameters that you are given. And so my process is to first build a box, if you like, a mental box of what I have to fit within. And then, cost can be part of it. I don't want it to cost too much. This is my end price point. All those things need to be taken into consideration. So when I have got all the sides to my box, all those things that the customer would like, the ideal world, we work backwards from there. And as I said, it's got to end up back to delicious. So it has to be something that appeals to a broad palate. So it can't be something, a little bit unusual. Like I am a bit unusual. I'm really happy to eat durian, which scares most people, anchovies, coriander. Am I scaring people yet? All those fun things. I know what scares you, David, from working on a cooking show with you before.
Yep.
But all those flavours, there's a lot. Nothing I won't taste once. We've been to some crazy places. I think I drew the line when I was in China at a few of the interesting creatures that I was presented there. But other than that, pretty much nothing. Certainly no vegetable is left untouched. There's some critters that I won't go near. But thankfully no one's as yet asked me for a mezcal worm lollipop or anything crazy like that.
You never know.
I know. Look at him. His eyes light up. He loves the weird stuff.
I do. And we might talk about that a bit later.
Yes.
Now, I want to know, when you're saying your process and you're developing with recipes, where does your inspiration come from?
Ooh, I'm inspired by, usually the raw ingredient. Like if I want to walk around and get inspired to do something, I've got need something to, particularly in the early days when I just wanted to fill my social media so that I could give people an idea with, my pages on Insta and stuff, so they could give them a flavour of what I was and who I was. I would just walk around a supermarket or a fresh market, really cool fresh markets like the Manning Road markets or stuff like that, where you'd have people who grew the food from scratch and they were all excited about it and they could tell you its history. I mean, there was a lady there that used to read to her chickens that laid the eggs, fun things like that. They're passionate about it. Those people set me on fire. I think they're fantastic. And I remember seeing something like I think it's called a watermelon radish. So I saw this watermelon radish and it's pretty because it's pink and it's white. And I thought, what can I do with one of those? So I bought a few and I shredded them, I sliced them, I diced them, I pickled them, and the one that ended up the tastiest and the most flavourful, that's what I published, and that's what I do. So basic raw ingredients is often what excites me, and particularly though, having a challenge like working within a box, like if you say, okay, Natalie, and I've had this, I really have, and I want you to picture it. Okay, so I've had someone come to me and say, Natalie, I've got a friend and it's their birthday and it's a special birthday and they never eat cake. And I said, why don't they eat cake? Well, because they don't have dairy. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's easy. I can fix that. And they don't have eggs. Oh, got a bit curly, but yeah, I can do it without eggs too. I've got a little secret there. And they don't have flour. And I'm like, okay, so no eggs, butter or flour. Sugar, they don't have that neither. And I was like, okay. So there's the 4 ingredients to a cake gone, but I still have to make a cake. Yes. So I'm like, okay, no problem, I can do that. So I grabbed a can of beans.
Very nice.
And I got that can of beans and I did a few interesting things with it, and there was some honey in there and maybe some raising agent because that wasn't off my list. And I made a delicious chocolate cake. In fact, to pass the test, I actually made it, rang a couple of friends and said, if you're coming past, I got some chocolate cake on the bench. And all my friends know this, so they're very happy to call past. I live quite centrally and often people say, have you got anything on the bench? Because I can't eat all the food that I cook. And so I threw that together, and then someone said, you probably need to put icing on it. And I went, icing. Well, what's icing made from? Well, traditionally, of course, it's sugar and butter. What was I going to do? David, what was I going to do?
don't know.
How was I going to make icing when I couldn't use the two basic ingredients?
Well, I'm sure you'll be able to whip it up. I've seen you're a gun in the kitchen.
It's true. And I'm going to give away a recipe here. Are we ready? Shall we drum roll it? Okay. I got a cauliflower.
Hey, look at that.
I steamed the bejesus out of it. I added some avocado.
Nice.
Yes. And then I trickled in a little bit of a little syrup called agave. Have you heard of that one?
No, what is it?
Oh, it comes from the agave cactus way over there in Mexico.
Okay.
It's the bit between making it's the bit after harvesting a cactus and before making tequila.
Okay, lovely.
So agave, when it's treated in a special way, turns into tequila, and who doesn't love that, right? But it's double the sweetness of sugar. It does have a GI component, and if they had have said no sugar, something else, I might have used something tricky like an alcohol sugar. Those we know as xylitol and erythritol and stuff like that. But I got those, with them together, and then it was kind of runny.
Oh, well.
Do you know what I did? I think it ended up
Yep.
with cacao powder.
Oh, nice.
So it turned into the most delicious chocolate mousse.
Yum.
Yeah, I know. So I had two recipes in one. I had a chocolate mousse to smother all over that cake, that delicious chocolate cake, and I had a new chocolate mousse recipe, which I was pretty excited about. And it was all vegetables. There was no dairy and there was no sugar, as it were.
All right, I'm going to give you a challenge.
Yeah, go for your life.
I'm going to throw out 4 ingredients. Just off the top of my head here. This is not planned.
Oh,
But we'll see how it goes. Let's see if you can make something out of this.
I'm frightened because you're awfully creative sometimes.
I know. Okay. Celery,
Yes.
condensed milk,
Oh.
yep, or evaporated milk, either one. I don't mind.
No, you need to be specific. I like a brief.
Okay, evaporated. We'll go
Yes.
with evaporated. So celery, evaporated milk,
Oh, yeah.
baked beans,
Baked beans
and potato.
and a potato. Huh. Right. Okay. What do you want me to achieve with those 4 ingredients?
Something edible.
Well, look, I think that's a bit too easy because, really, at this point, I'm thinking a creamy potato baked with beans, and you just throw the celery in and saute it. But I kind of I was happy. I was a bit excited for the condensed milk. I was going to candy.
Okay.
I was going to candy that celery.
Yep.
And then turn it into like a sweet celery, which, that would work. It would actually work. We have to play with that a bit. And then dehydrate it, and you'd have these candied little bits of celery. And then, throw that over the top of, I'd really want to put some sour cream in there. I'd really want to put a little bit of sour cream over potato. And look, I traditionally can't stand baked beans. I'd have to get rid of that tomato sauce. I'd have to rinse all that off and then actually just use the beans, by themselves. I cannot cope with baked beans. It's just the amount of sugar in them. Don't give your children baked beans. They are so full of sugar. Look at the side of the panel, for goodness sake. Yep, okay.
And your food knowledge is incredible. How did you develop that?
Oh, I think that that's inherent. I think my grandfather was president of the Food and Wine Society of Australasia, and we're talking like 60s, 70s, back in the heyday for them. And he was really into his wine. We'd go, I was just talking about this to someone the other day, had a big castle on a hill. I'm not joking. He'd been to Germany quite a few times, and he really liked all the castles on the hills that coat the side of the Rhine. And so he needed his own castle, so he built one. And he built it on a hill. Well, the only hill in Perth, as you know, is Kalamunda. Yep. So he built a castle on a hill in Kalamunda. It was called Grinzig, modelled after a proper castle, complete with sweeping staircase and the dark carpet and the wood panelling and, going to and a cuckoo clock when he came in the door. Going to my grandparents' place was not your normal granny and grandpa kind of experience. In fact, I had to call him grandfather grandfather Bennett. And so I'd go there, and his wife was a cordon bleu trained cook. I actually went to the cordon bleu care of my friend Anne Candy over in Paris, who used to work as the head of PR for Chanel and Shiseido and all those fabulous brands over in Paris. And she introduced me to cordon bleu, and we went over there and I did a full tour, which was lovely of them. And I thought of my grandmother trained over there. And then she went on to win heaps of gold plates at the King Arthur's table at the Reg Castle Motel, which is on a hill. And if you know your old Perth of old, lost Perth,
Yep.
that is just above the Burswood. Mm-hmm. And it's actually been preserved, the shell of this Reg Castle. He really had a thing for castles, I'm telling you. Yep. The shell of that. And it was the first revolving restaurant in the Southern Hemisphere. And he ran it off of a washing machine motor. The whole restaurant floor turned. This is before Highlight 33.
Yeah, very inventive.
Or the sea. He made the first revolving restaurant here. So that was my grandfather. He was an interesting character, and he had the last drop up there in Kalamunda. Mm-hmm. So that kind of grounding with people that were so passionate about food and wine, that's what I was brought up with. My nana on the other side used to make people wedding cakes. So
Okay.
I still make cakes. Mm-hmm. I don't have a cake business. Please don't call me. Everyone still gets me to make cakes though. I do. I do the curly cakes. I don't do the easy ones. I do the ones where, as we were describing before, I do still do those when people have got nowhere to go. But she used to decorate cakes. So she was really into cooking as well. And so, yeah, I guess that, and then living in so many places from the age of 12, I moved overseas to America and did some schooling in America. And then when I was 17, I left Perth and did some more stuff. I was living in Hong Kong and having to walk through the fresh markets. And the job that I found was for a place called Oliver's Fine Food. And they were a division of Dairy Farm, which is a huge company. It's listed, and it supplied the expatriates with all the food from Europe. So, you know, there's a massive expatriate population in Hong Kong at that point in the early 90s. And so, yeah, my job was to kind of know all about the cheeses and the foods and to create the recipes and new pasta flavours and stuff like that. So that was at 17, and I kind of garnered a spot in there by waitressing when I was 15 and being a really terrible waitress, but with a good work ethic.
That's good. That's something.
Well, they said to me, and this was at the Mosman Bay Tea Rooms, and I turned up for a shift at work, and there was a very fresh gentleman on one of the tables, and he might have said something or did something, and I wasn't impressed with it, so I might have deliberately spilt some soup on his country road soup. And they said, Natalie, that's not on, but you've got a great work ethic. And so why don't you just hang out in the kitchen a bit? And so I did. I hung out in the kitchen. I did, prep. And so that's kind of where that started, prepping in the kitchen from 15 on my weekend job, and it just kind of snowballed into a food job, so to speak. And I stayed in kitchens and bits and pieces for quite some time until I worked out that all my friends were going out on Friday and Saturday and I was in a kitchen. So that's about the time I switched over to advertising and marketing.
Mm. And have you found advertising and marketing, your dabble in there, have they found that a good, stepping stone into the food business?
Look, something I'd advise people that are kind of just starting out in their careers and they're like, oh no, they've had in their head what they've always wanted to do. Do what you're drawn to, do what you're passionate about, and you might not be able to connect the dots until much later in life. Because for me, it was just totally opposite, jumping out of a hands-on creative job into selling advertising in a magazine. And that my first job was for a restaurant magazine, but a magazine nonetheless. And then I had to learn about, space and the printing and the CYMK and all the stuff that we used to do when we did print runs. And that was a really good training ground. And then from there, it went to designing, advertising, and making an ad up for people because they were like, oh, well, I'll buy the space, but I don't have an ad. And I'll be like, that's okay, I can knock one together for you. And that's how that kind of evolved. And then I ended up being the director of sales and marketing for a lifestyle magazine in China. Once again, I went overseas and I was in Beijing and we launched the third of 3 cities, the lifestyle magazine called That's Beijing. And, and I used all of the techniques that I'd seen my boss here at the magazine where I worked here employ. And then I became the #1 magazine over there. It was kind of fun. So I really enjoyed advertising and the schmoozing and all the perks that went for working with a magazine. That really suited my 20s. And I didn't come back to Perth until I was about 32. And then I actually felt a bit burnt out from that lifestyle. And I went back to doing what I knew, which was actually making cakes for cafes. And that's where Sugarlust, my business, was born. And that's when I met my husband through that business. He was a chef. And then I took a break and had kids and then needed a Thermomix, and then I think you've heard the rest of the story.
Now, you've had some amazing opportunities and you've met a whole lot of different people. You've networked with a whole bunch of people. I know when it was, last year, as we know each other, so that's no big secret.
Yeah.
But I was looking at your Instagram feed, just I don't know why, for some reason, and I saw a picture of you with someone who was very, very famous, and I could not work out the dots. I was just like, how did this is like polar opposites. Of course, do you know what I'm referring to?
I do.
Do you think, have a guess, do you think you know?
I do know who it is.
Yeah, and you're wearing something.
I'm not a name dropper.
Okay, well, I will.
You can do it.
I think it's Instagram Market Chef.
Yes.
Yes, because I'll just tell you, I went to the first UFC that was here in Perth. I got tickets pretty easily, but that was the second one. Me and my mate tried to get a ticket to that, but no hope. So, and I did watch it on television.
Yeah. I watched the Islam fight on television, and the whole time I'm there because I'm not a watcher.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll admit, I hold my hand up and look, I was standing there, oh, don't hurt him. No, he's so straight. No, please.
Yep.
And it was fighting Volkanovski.
Yes.
It was a pretty big fight. But yeah, he landed here to do his training about 3 weeks out, and he's really quite health conscious, liked clean, simple, healthy food. And as I said, my branding is all about health and being clean and whatever. And so I happened to have one of my networks said, look, I actually know someone who might be free because they hadn't pre-organised something. And his manager said, oh, look, please, we'd really like for you to cook for him and all the team, because there's actually a team of people, the people he trains with and, the managers and all that, so there's 14 big hairy men that I had to cook for every day, and we did a lunch every day for them. And, also it had to be halal, so they knew that I was, knew how to do the halal thing and make sure that I kept everything clean and separate. So I cooked for him every day for about almost 3 weeks, and I also did I catered the party afterwards. That's why there's a photo of me wearing his belt. But he was just the most lovely guy, and every time it was so cute because I'd pull up in my delivery van to their accommodation, and I'd inevitably make it before they had come from training, and they'd literally all jump out of their little convoy of cars come running up to the back of my delivery van and go, we'll carry it, we'll carry it. What is it today? Oh, my God, you're the best cook. This is so delicious. We're so excited. Can't you come with us? So they really love the food, and they were lovely, lovely guys, and their little faces would light up, and they were just adorable. And so I'd formed quite a connection by the time he was in the ring with Volkanovski, and I was like, oh no, I don't think I can watch because I'm a lover and not a fighter. But yeah, that's how I came across him, was through a contact that needed someone that was really good with clean food, could take direction and could cook to his taste.
So how do you deal with, I know you kind of explained it, but how do you deal with the different kind of diet requirements?
Look, it's going to come off a little obsequious, but there's not much I can't cook.
Yep.
There's things I won't cook. Look, I really don't enjoy pork products, so for me the halal thing was totally cool.
Yep.
Not a big fan. The most I can kind of squeak past. I'll try it if I have to for a client, but I won't swallow it. That's like the spittoon at the red wine. Yeah, it's like spittoon at wine tasting for me. I'm just not a lover of it. It's too strong a flavour for me, and too smelly a product for me. Sorry, everyone who loves the sizzle of bacon, but it'll send me screaming from the room. But I can understand it. Yeah. And there's a difference between my personal choice and being able to understand and comprehend it. And, so just because it's not my personal choice to have it doesn't mean I don't understand it and I can't work with it. And I have done many a product involving it. But the most that I can kind of cope with is a very wafer thin slice of prosciutto with 5 tons of melon. And that's about the extent of what I can do where a pork product is concerned.
Ham and banana rolls, maybe?
Oh, God, yes. You're squeaking into territory where we have worked together. That's going to be fun. Have you told your listeners what it is that some of your other side projects do?
Oh, I think we shall we tell them?
So we can. Quite some time ago, I think it's about 4 years ago now.
I think so, yeah. Maybe a bit longer.
Yeah, around the dreaded sea.
It was when COVID hit.
Yeah, that's why, because we had to do distancing and masks and all sorts. But we met because David had a concept for a show, and he had been thumbing through his mum's cookbooks, and he had seen some quite crazy little recipes. Mm-hmm. Ham and banana rolls, I think, is probably one of them.
Yes. Hormel tongue mould.
Oh.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they were pretty wacky.
Yeah, they were.
And so he had this concept that, look, mid-century stuff, a lot of people have not been born in an era or had access to grandparents who knew what some of this stuff was. So why let it die with a recipe book? So we resurrected it. And so we have totted out a little show that is in the development phase, looking for funding. We're in the development phase at the moment. We've written, you've written a good chunk of, and we let him just draw the skeleton and then we all flesh it out, actually. Myself, Ginger, Candace Sparrow, and David will flesh it out, and then every now and then our cinematographer will chuck a couple of ideas at us as well. But we have written 2 series altogether with a sketched out third of 12 shows in a series. So it's 24 shows. They're half-hour shows, and they are a couple of lovely ladies, Ginger and Mimi, and they cook these fabulous creations from yesteryear on screen. My favourite bit is actually what Ginger does, though, because she knocks up the drinks.
Oh, yes. She loves a good cocktail.
Oh, yes. She makes the most awesome cocktails. So back in the 40s and 50s, if you weren't around, they used to... It was very Stepford wife, you would have heard of that, to greet your man at the door with a cocktail in his slippers and have dinner on the table and, get all that housework done and be just the domestic goddess. And so I'm a rather jaded domestic goddess in the show. It's probably a little bit close to life, really, with a couple of husbands, if not three, under her belt, and Ginger is Spencer, God forbid, left on the shelf and almost 30.
Shock.
So no. And so we knock up some recipes. She's been spending all her time with crooners in nightclubs, so she knows her way around the cocktails. And I obviously know my way around the kitchen. And so I'm teaching her to cook, so she might find herself a husband. And that's the premise of our friendship and our relationship. And from that, funny little episodes are born, and it is still centred around the dishes that we cook. And so without giving too much away, ham and banana rolls that David had mentioned, potato candy, which I don't know if it's ever going to come off. So if you do see that one on air, it's because I finally made the recipe work in the way that it's meant to. We just don't have the same breed of potatoes here. Don't start me on potatoes.
Okay, I won't.
Don't start me on potatoes. We do not know potatoes in Australia. We have potatoes, and if you're lucky, they're blue, red or white. Yeah, no, there's so many more potatoes, and unfortunately there's only very few growers who are actually turned on to the fact that people might want more than a plain potato. But that's because recipe developers like me haven't been given the platform to show people what the difference between each potato is. And you see in Europe and places like that, people will ask for a specific kind of potato or a specific, here we're not there yet. So if the potato farming industry wants to reach out to me and have me train people as to the difference between a waxy, do you know the difference between a waxy potato and it's kind of, do you know what a waxy potato is? Did you know that there was two kinds of potatoes?
I knew there were some kinds of potatoes.
You just go off those guides.
We've had this conversation before, so that's when I was enlightened.
Yes, that's right. I enlighten you about quite a few things.
You do.
I enlighten Ginger about things too.
Yes.
Ginger didn't know what a clove was. She thought it I hadn't finished the sentence and I was meant to say clove of garlic. But no, I was like, no, babe, these little tiny stick things.
I can enlighten you on something too, though.
Oh, go for it.
You know what's really nice? If you get tomato sauce or mustard and put it on fruit. So like watermelon, orange.
Oh, yeah, no, there's actually an Italian preserve, which is sugar and mustard. They're called mustard fruits. So it's called mustard fruits, and you put it on a cheese board. You find it, I think, actually just down the road here, because we're on Oxford Street. Thank you to the studio. Down at the Restore, they have the mustard fruits. And if you've ever wondered what they were for, it's for the cheese board. Same as pickled walnuts. Ever seen one of them?
No.
So a pickled walnut, that's also for the cheese board. That's an old English thing that they used to do with like Stilton and some of your blue cheeses. So, I can make an interesting cheese board.
Good.
I'll
Good to
give you
know.
some mustard fruits and pickled walnuts. So pickled figs is another really good one. If you've got way too many figs and don't want them to ripen, or you want to, you can actually pickle them green. There's all kinds of stuff you can do with food, and that's what I enjoy, is resurrecting not just the old recipes like we are doing for the show. It's more entertainment value, but also old knowledge, like why people used to soak beans. It scares me silly when people boil beans from dry. I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Oh, you don't need to soak them. Oh, God, yes, you do. Do you know why? Do you know why you need to soak beans? Lectins. You're poisoning your family. Do you know what lectins are? They're an enzyme inhibitor. Look at these things that I know about food. So please, 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 please soak your beans before you cook them, because you want the little seed to let go of its horrible little lectins so you don't get a bellyache and all the other associated bean tragedies.
Now, I did want to know, we just talked very briefly about COVID.
Yes, the great COVID baking event. That was, everyone suddenly needed to know how to bake bread. And look, I tell you, if I had have been a step ahead of the curve, I would have had How to Bake Bread by Natalie because that's honestly, that's what everyone did. I feel like everyone suddenly needed to bake every second photo was of someone's loaf of bread. Yes, about COVID. Keep going.
Okay, well, wasn't where I was going to go with.
Oh, okay.
But that's okay. You know, we are off on a tangent, but
Yes.
that's okay. Now, but with COVID, how did you find, supplies and demand? Because there was always a push of, goods.
Oh,
that
you
weren't
mean
being-
like there was no pasta, no flour?
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's my jam.
Yeah.
I was so excited because,
You're in your element, weren't
I'm
you?
in my element. I love it when I can't use something. It's my favourite thing. Hey Natalie, make one of these with none of this, none of that. I just love a challenge because when when you know the physics, and this is what cooking is, and this might be why some people don't like it. It is actually physics and chemistry
Science.
and maths. That's all it is. It's that, and I think Heston Blumenthal made that a bit more famous and relevant by having molecular gastronomy and doing a show on it. But that's what it is. And when you are given a problem, I guess I really liked maths problems, and it would be a lot cheaper for me to love maths because that's just pen on paper, isn't it? But I love cooking problems. And so, I love it's curly little things. Like, did you know if you're at altitude, I used to live in a place called Park City in Utah, which is at 9,000 feet. Did you know when you're cooking at altitude, because we don't have much altitude in Australia, that your cakes won't rise because of the air pressure? And so you have to change the recipe.
What do you do?
Well, you've got to add more leavening agent.
Yep.
So there's these fun little things that you learn from, and to know that you have to know a bit about physics, and chemistry. So, if you have a background where you're fascinated by science, cooking's actually a really good stream to go to because you use science in that, and so to have a good grounding in that. So for me, when we were shy of ingredients and we couldn't have things, that was no problem because I just found other things to cook. And during that period, so that my kids didn't get sick and my family, I was throwing so much stock, bone stock. And we all know chicken soup is a good healer, but it's also a good preventative because of what it does for your gut. And, the inside the bones, if you boil them for a certain period of time and you throw a little bit of vinegar in the water to make sure they release all of their nutrients, you are taking things out that actually help build the gut. And medical science has recently found making a stronger and stronger case for our immune system being in our gut. So I actually had clients during that period that asked me for immune boosting recipes. And so I found mushrooms, when you boil them for over an hour, they increase the amount of ergothioneine, which is a vitamin. It's another vitamin. I think it's a K2 or something like that. It increases that, and that has something to do that. They haven't even really delved into this. This is still, on the forefront of nutritional science, that ergothioneine actually boosts your immune system, and that's only really accessible if you boil it for a long period of time. So that's why the way in which you prepare food is just as important as the nutrients in the food, because you can lock away the nutrients in the food. Say if you have your beans and don't soak them, or your lentils and don't soak them, or your nuts and don't soak them, because they're all seeds and they protect themselves by having lectins and other enzyme inhibitors, or things that inhibit you from absorbing the nutrients. Okay, so the way that you treat those, and then the way that you treat bones, the way that you treat mushrooms, all releases the nutrients that you need for better health. So to know how to prepare all these things, and to know the secrets and science behind that, and the slow food and all this ancient wisdom going back to why I like old recipes that we have lost in our fast-paced life for convenience sake, it's really important to health. And I think it's a key reason why health is now an issue with our society, is because people don't know how to prepare the food that they eat, because 90% of disease is metabolic. What does that mean? That means 90% of disease comes through your mouth.
And now, I know that you love looking at food trends.
I do.
Yeah. What are some of your favourites right now or in the past?
Oh, well, food trends, people are like, oh, what's that? But you've all done it. You've all been slinging down apple cider vinegar thinking that it was healthy to sling it down as a shot. You have all gone through the turmeric phase when, turmeric has been used as an anti-inflammatory by yogis in India where it's endemic too for thousands of years. But suddenly everyone discovered it about 10 or 15 years ago, and turmeric lattes were born. So those are the food trends that we're talking about. Pomegranate molasses was another one that I suffered through. There was pomegranate molasses started to be on everything. That was another food trend when chefs find something and then they go, "Oh, yes, this is really in."
Kale was another one.
Oh yeah, kale's another one. Now, kale's another thing you need to know how to prepare because it can actually suppress your thyroid. So if you've got thyroid issues, it can suppress it if you don't prepare it properly. If it's raw, or you people adding it to your smoothies, you don't want to be having it every day because it'll actually suppress your thyroid. So you do need to cook it to chemically change how that food responds in your digestive system. So yeah, no, there is food trends like that. What's my favourite? Coconut oil.
Yep.
Don't like the taste of it that much. I like it as MCT, but what it does for someone like me who's got a very creative attention, not going to mention that, but my attention's often in many places at once. I'll just let you diagnose me. That is actually helps to keep me centred, and that's the medium chain triglycerides that are in there that can just help with, and I think actually it's become a bit of a trend, MCT. Again, it's like been reawoken as a trend because of its benefits in one of the trendy diets, the keto one, which you probably heard. Yes, see, this is a thing. Diet is such a thing with so many trends. You hark back to the Aitken or the Pritikin.
Yep.
That's my parents' era. There's always been something, and even big events like when, American history when the president had a heart attack and then they, started, that's where the cholesterol became the beast, but it's not actually a beast. Without cholesterol, you wouldn't have much of a brain because your brain's got a lot, your brain's actually fat. So, my favourite food trends, look, I just like seeing what's going around now. What's in now? Black sesame seems to be something that people are a bit excited about. Black garlic, the black foods. There seems to be a lot of that going around at the moment. What else have I seen on menus that, the cheeses. People getting to know cheeses a bit better. I mean, I really am enjoying the burrata appearing on everyone's menu with all kinds of interesting stone fruit thrown with it because you don't do it with tomatoes. I mean, you can, but that's a bit traditional. I do enjoy seeing everyone's take on how to serve burrata. That's been my fun investigation. I guess I just love following what people are doing that are on the edge. I remember there was a very short phase of green ants, which are a bush food. And I do really want to expand bush food for our Indigenous culture to market overseas because I think that, it's got health benefits, camu and stuff like that, and it's got taste benefits. Davidson plum is incredibly sharp and amazing. So I'd love to see Indigenous industry because they've obviously got the strong knowledge on how to source or grow these foods. I'd love to develop foods in that area. Love to.
Now, we've also talked about historical food or food that, back from yesteryear. I'm just going to take you back there. What are some of those trends that you are glad that are no longer with us?
Jellied everything, although it's terrible for our gut because jelly is fantastic for you. Like having gelatin is actually really good for your tummy.
Yep.
And it's a bit sad that it's been phased out to the extent that it is because there's a lot of nutrition hiding in there. But I think they went a bit wild with it.
They did.
I mean, we could literally do an entire series on jellied foods.
We could.
We could just have wackied jellied edition because, I mean, there's from tongues to bananas to what? I mean, some of the recipes that you've put. Has everyone checked out a Wacky Food Hunters on Instagram and Facebook?
And TikTok now.
And TikTok now. Just...
Some of them are weird.
Some of
They
it,
are.
you find them weird. I just find them fascinating.
I do too, yeah.
Yes, I find them fascinating. I really like it. Like when we have, so I'm hoping that if you do go there, you'll see that we've actually filmed a first attempt pilot when we were still kind of cutting our teeth, and then we've got a read through. But on one of these, we made the... What is it? The tomato...
Grand tomato aspic.
There you go. Grand tomato aspic. And as you can imagine, it's like a jellied gazpacho. And I can literally hear your skin rankling, dear listener. It sounds horrific, but actually I think everyone was...
It wasn't the worst.
I know.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad.
It acted as like a flavour base for the chicken salad that goes in the middle and in the traditional American sense of a salad. So they'll say like a tuna salad, and that's what they put inside there as a sandwich filling in America. A salad is actually when you get like little tiny pieces or chopped up finely, celery, red onion and some mayonnaise, and you blend it through with like either tuna or shredded chicken and stuff like that. That's their meaning of a salad. And so that, dear listener, was placed in the middle of this jellied gazpacho, which was in a gorgeous ring. And then on top we had like sliced olives, you know, the cute ones with the pimento in the middle, the stuffed olives. And then around around the outside was, and who doesn't love a deviled egg? If you don't know what that is, it's, you know, when you get the yolk and you mash it up with curry and mayo and then put it back into the egg. I mean, and they were gone in seconds after we finished shooting.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't find one for love nor money.
I know.
They were hell popular. So those shouldn't fade from existence. So they're having a reprise with the show, which is, you know, so, but yeah, the jelly thing, it has its limits.
I think overdoing a mayonnaise one's one that kills me.
Yes, I think that's when the mayonnaise companies came out and Miracle Whip.
And Hellman's as well.
And Hellman's. Oh, it's a good mayo still, though. I think that, you know, those kinds of things, you know, I'm still not convinced by Spam in a Can, but someone must love it because it's still on supermarket shelves today. You know, I think... some of the trends that I'm kind of, well, no, you know, I guess offal. I was brought up still in the era where offal was a thing, and I'd have lamb's fry at my grandmother's house with bacon back when I ate it, and this is before I was 17 and lived in China and got put off pigs for life. But yeah, the lamb's fry with bacon, you know, and eating of the offal. I do have a strong belief that we should utilise more of an animal if we're going to source animals for food. I think that we should use all of it. And so, you know, it's sad that offal kind of faded, but it's also understandable because, you know, we just found out how to make the meat better, as in, you know, produce more and more meat, and we kind of, offal fell by the wayside, but it is actually sad that happened, I think. But things that I don't miss are, look, when they get rid of food colouring, I'll be like, I won't miss that at all.
But food colouring's great.
No.
If you're at a kid's party.
Not if you're the parent who has to pick up and deal with the kid afterwards.
And clean it up.
Yes. You, I think I was, you know, back in the days, and my kids are now, you know, closer to 20, but I was like, this is a colour-free party. And I think the parents were like, oh, but, you know, at least I didn't send their kids home just manic from those colours. My daughter's really sensitive to them, so I banished red from my home quite some time ago and found cochineal. Do you know what cochineal is made out of, David?
No.
cochineal is made from a bug that feeds on a cactus and it turns things like a carmine pink. So I can still colour your cake, but I'm just going to use squashed beetles to do it.
Well, that sounds intriguing.
You don't believe how many insects that you are actually eating already, everyone.
I know you said when you were in China there were some delicacies that you kind of went, yeah, no. What were they?
Okay, so at one point when I was in China, I was in a place where it wasn't mainstream, it wasn't Beijing, it wasn't Shanghai, it wasn't Guangzhou. It was somewhere really south called Nanning, which is on the border with Vietnam, and it's like in the heart of kind of like it's in the Canton kind of region, which is tropical. And so you've got lots of bugs. And the eeriest thing about me walking through the streets of Nanning when I first arrived, I couldn't place it. I was looking around and I was like, what is it with this place that is so unusual and I can't quite put my finger on it? And then suddenly I realised when I'd had that same kind of feeling, and it's actually when I was on the set of Desperate Housewives in LA. That's a whole nother story.
Get to that in a minute.
But I was on the set of that, and there was, obviously because it's a set that's made to look like it's out in the real world, but it's kind of like very protected. And there's no birds or rats or the critters that are just around because it's kind of actually quite a dry set. So that's what it was like walking through Nanning, because there was no birds, no rats, not like I'd experienced in Hong Kong, which is also a South Chinese city. Well, it's Chinese now. It was weird, and I was like, where are all the bugs? Like, where's the cockroaches? Where's the birds? And like, where are the frogs and the rats and the critters? I come from Australia. We've got critters everywhere you turn. You can't open your garage door without seeing a spider or.
Yeah.
And then I found them. Do you want to know where I found them all?
In the kitchen.
At the markets.
Oh, yeah.
In jars.
Lovely.
Or the frogs were in like an onion bag. I did turn vegetarian after living in China. The rats were dissected like you'd see in a science education kind of biology class, and then dried. So they were like frisbee shaped with a tail, with 4 paws out on each,
Lovely.
And so that's where the beasts were. And then, of course, if they're at the market, they're going to be in the food that's served to you. So being a vegetarian was a really safe option for me. But I do remember playing games at the airport. Nanning Airport was an interesting airport at the time, and this is about 1997, I guess. There was a restaurant, and we decided on before we checked in that we'd go have something to eat. And I was actually cooking for 14 Austrian and German guys who worked for Steinecker building breweries, and they were there building a new brewery for this South Chinese city, Nanning. And I was cooking for them because they couldn't cope with the local food, and they needed to have their pork knuckle and sauerkraut. And so I was there cooking for them, and so I was the one that had to go to the markets, and that was a baptism of fire, and that will turn you vegetarian. You'd be standing there and you'd feel a tug on your dress, and you're like, who's pulling my dress? And it was the lady's bag next to you with a little duck in it, and he was going home to be dinner, and he was pulling on my skirt out of her basket. Like, it was kind of scary. I became a vegetarian there, but the boys still bravely ate meat, and we were honoured guests at a banquet. And this banquet was in a traditional Chinese restaurant. And by traditional, I mean over water with the bamboo and the traditional, and it was kind of open air because of where we were in China. And the first course came out, and I'd already stated my Buddhist veganism. So I got, some vegetable soup, which was quite lovely. And the boys had this big pot put in the centre there on the Lazy Susan, and the ladle went in and these ringlets came down from the ladle, just, glistening little pale ringlets. And I'm like, oh, what are those glistening little pale ringlets? They were baby snakes.
Lovely.
Yeah, baby snake soup. And, when they're so young, the cartilage isn't a bone, and so you eat them kind of whole, kind of like a different twist on spaghetti. And then that just... And I did mention that I was with quite an Aryan group. All the boys were kind of blonde and blue-eyed, and
Yep.
I am, for you listeners, I am of Southeast Asian descent. There's some darkness in my skin and my hair, and I've got black hair, and I'm short, and I often was the one that the waiters and waitresses would come to because they would assume that maybe I spoke a bit of Mandarin or Cantonese or a language they could communicate in, and I couldn't, but I used to always sit right next to the translator who could. And so I'm sat next to him, and the next course comes out, and the boys were hoeing into it, and I thought, oh, this is good. They love this. I think I better cook this for them. And it was sliced sausage with like green chilies, and and there's like assorted. At this point, there's assorted meat dishes because in China they bring out the meat dishes before the vegetable dishes, and so there's an assorted there. But they really like this, and so I'm speaking to the translator next to me, and I said, "Zhong, what is it?" And he's like, "Oh, don't know how to say." And I said, "Oh, okay, you don't know how to say. Okay, let's play our game." We had a little game going on. I'd say, like, what animal? He goes, oh, I don't know, like horse, but not a horse. And I'm like, and the word for horse, by the way, is ma. And I'm like, okay, so like a horse, but not a horse. And he's like, yeah. And I said, does it make a sound? Like horses go, nay. And like, does it make a sound? He's like, yes. E-or, e-or.
Donkey.
And I'm like, oh, it's a donkey.
Yep.
Oh, donkey. It's a donkey. Oh, it's donkey. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I said, okay, so what cut of the donkey is it? And he blushed.
Don't tell me.
He blushed. I think you're blushing. He blushed, and it was, he said, only the boy donkey has.
Balls.
You're very close.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You don't want me to say it on the radio?
You can, that's right.
Okay. Right. And I did mention it was sausage shaped, and
yeah.
so I looked at him and I went, and I kind of went where you were, and I said, but they're not round.
Yeah.
They're like coins. Like it's sausage. He said, yes. In China we call this one coins because in China the coins used to be like a shape with a hole through the centre so that you could string rope through the centre of it and keep that as your purse. That's how you kept all your coins on you, right? You used to wear them. And so he said, coins, because this sausage's got a hole in the centre. Well, he didn't need to draw too much of a picture from that point,
You
but
worked it out.
I did need to tell the boys after they all grabbed one more mouthful. So while they were all there,
I wouldn't have.
with their I didn't tell. No. I just waited for them to get the chopsticks because I'm sadistic. The chopsticks and shuffle another piece of inverted commas, parentheses, sausage in. And when they were all loaded up, I went, hey, you guys know what you're eating? At which point, like, because we're honoured guests, remember that bit where I said we're honoured guests? They couldn't spit it out. But I watched them all like this, gulp, 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 gulping around the table. And then from that point on, no one ate any more sausage. It was quite funny. So yes, I didn't try any of that because I just I said I was a vegetarian.
Well, I think that was a very smart move.
Yes.
Very smart.
Wisdom.
Very good.
So those things. Look, I mean, it's good that they eat rats over there. It is a source of protein. I can't see it catching on, but it is good because they have a vast number of people that need protein and to be fed. and it's, it is good to get protein from other sources. So I actually encourage it, and I think that if we were able to find different sources of protein other than the tried and true that we have, we'd have a better diversity of animals on the planet. So I'm not going to try and dissuade people from it. There were things that I tried that were interesting, but some a bit sad. Like in hot pots, they'd often put, in winter you have hot pot, they would often put seahorses to flavour the broth side, I think. Oh, was it the oil side? And I was like, oh, so I think that's why the vegetarianism stuck with me for a long period of time from my time in China, because the realisation was there. And now when I do have animal protein, I'm really reverent about it because, I try and keep it to a healthy minimum rather than just, continually, throw down a protein, just an easy protein. And I try and eat a diversity as well, because I think if we all eat a diversity, then there's a diversity on the planet. And I think that is something that's important for the planet, to maintain a diversity of cultures, a diversity of animals, and a diversity of landscapes.
Well, I've got one more question for you, Natalie.
Okay.
What are your goals for you in your current career as a recipe developer? Where would you like to see yourself? Let's just say I'm going to go the status quo 5 years' time.
Well, you've had a little taste of my ethos with this interview.
Yes.
Particularly, I think the listeners too have had a little taste of who I am and where I come from and the things that I believe in. And what I would like is for more people to hold reverence for food. I'd like to be the one to teach them. I'd like more people to know how to put nutrients in their body that help them stay healthy so that they can perform their passion at their best, whether their passion is teaching children, whether their passion is nursing sick people, whether their passion is to develop new and interesting ways of living in society without impacting the planet. Whatever your passion is, whether it be creative or industrial, or I want you to be at your best to be able to perform those functions. So to do that, you need to have great nutrition and health. So I'd love to be able to teach people more about nutrition and health without being too rah-rah and trendy about it, just ancient knowledge, I suppose. So I'd love to have a platform in order to do that. And I would love to have, a platform where people feel encouraged to step into the kitchen and take a bit of, interest in what it is that they put into their bodies. So I suppose, where do I see myself? I'd love to work further in the media because I do enjoy broadcast media. I'd love to have a TV show again. I have appeared on a few TV shows cooking, but it has been a commercial enterprise. So that has been, once again, been given a brief, and then, for Mount Barker chicken and all sorts of interesting places like that, putting together recipes. I'd love to have ones with that where the aim is the end benefit to the end user of knowing how to prepare food.
And just one final point. You just said there that you like to teach.
I do.
Yeah, and I think, especially with food, I think it's very important to teach kids. Start young.
Yeah, it is. It is. So I have two daughters. One of them has just left school, 3 months ago, and she's gone for her first gap year job. And she said, they're looking for a waitress. And I said, okay, well, you can be a waitress. That's a honourable thing to do, and it'll teach you about interpersonal skills and stuff like that, and
problem solving, all
sorts. So that was my first job. So hopefully she's got a better temperament than me. I said, but in the interview, make sure that you say, both my parents, your dad was a chef and your mum is a recipe developer. make sure you say that you know your way around a kitchen, which makes you an all-rounder, which makes you really employable because you know how to do anything in the kitchen because you've been watching me and you've been listening to me and you've been creative with me. And she does create her own stuff from the very get-go. She's been really involved. My younger daughter, she's very creative, but she's artistic. So the cooking that she has done, she's not a fabulous cook. I'm just going to put it right out there and spoil all her chances of marriage. No, I'm joking. She's not a fabulous cook, but she has had some really fantastic creative ideas for the school cooking competition that they do. They have a day called Heather Lamont at MLC, and she has taken out first place with one of her things, which was an ice cream scoop. It was an ice cream scoop that was a cake, I think it was, and it was made to look like it was ice cream, but it wasn't actually. It was really clever. So, but that was more about the painting and the preparation of the white chocolates and the artistic stuff. So, just not to be scared though of food. And she gives herself a hard time because she's not as good with her sister, but she still knows her way how to make herself a healthy protein shake in the morning and stuff like that. She still knows how to prep herself a little bit of food, and she makes herself guacamole and stuff, but she's not as gifted as the elder one.
Well, Natalie, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, thanks for having me, and and I hope that the listeners do get something out of all the tales that I tell, and they know where to find me if they want to know more about what it is that I do, or I can do stuff for them if they need a product developed or something like that. Yeah.
Well, we'll certainly give you the links of Natalie's website and Instagram and all that jazz when this episode is out. So thanks again.
Great. And the next time you'll see me will be on Wacky Food Hunters, I think.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you,
All
David.
Right. Thank you.